Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. And welcome if you are on Twitter, if you saw this and decided to tune in and see what's going on here. We are trying to stream to Twitter today. We see it here, so I know it's going up, but I don't know if you see us yet. So anyway, welcome, and let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
First one comes from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida, and Jeff wonders, recommendations for a sports broadcaster-style headset mic suitable for podcasting travel kits and expecting poor acoustic conditions.
I go, Nikki.
Yeah, the very popular one that you'd see in most broadcast situations are dynamic headset microphones from Sennheiser. This is the HMD product line from them. They have multiple models. They have HMD 27 as well as the HMD 300 amongst others. They also have a condenser version, which is the HMD-C line. Another popular brand and model is the DT797. This is what's used by the HBS and also OBS for their World Cup coverage, all their opens and the Olympic Games.
Good, Courtney.
You know, Mickey, that's exactly what I was going to say. The Sennheiser 8, I have it dialed up here, HMD 26s. These are the ones that they were using during the political conventions this year in the United States, where they're down on the convention floor with, PAs blasting in the background and people talking all around them. And so you could hear the commentators fairly clearly with all that background noise going on, their dynamics, and you get them pretty close. They're about $500 for this particular model without the cable. You got to order your cable separately, depending on whether you want a coily cable or a straight cable.
Don't get the coily. Go ahead, Alex.
Both Courtney and Mickey mentioned two of my three suggestions, and those ones are definitely by far the best. Also, I guess I'll just show the third one here as another option here. Audio-Technica also makes some of these. I still think the Sennheiser is going to be the best one in terms of directionality and reducing background noise, but that is another option, and they have price ranging all the way from $200 to $500, so your mileage will vary with those.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand is up next. What are the best USB into MIDI adapters which will allow a decent amount of SYSEX data to be sent and received? Example, a full dump from a synth or MIDI-enabled amp with all patches and settings to and from its host. And he's hopefully in the sub-$200 US kind of price point.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this wouldn't really be a limitation that would happen at the MIDI interface side of things. This would be based on the capability of the synth to send this complete dump of data. It's not limited by the interface.
Next question.
Dan in Columbus, Ohio is next. I use my MixPre 6 as an audio interface on my Mac. I have channels 5 and 6 mapped to the USB interface. Is it possible to map channels 5 and 6 to a knob that I'm not using? I'd like to adjust the gain of my computer audio when it's either too low or too high.
Ronnie?
I haven't been able to do that. I have tried and looked for the possibility to do that because I have normally the two other channels available, or the two faders available. So I'm not sure that you can use that function on the MixPre 6, and I guess it's the version 2.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, on the MixPre product line, you are not able to reassign what each channel fader does. But if you want to be able to have physical control of these channels that don't have faders assigned to them, you can buy one of the supported MIDI controllers that
like a Korg or
the
MixPre
supports. Yeah, so the options I think now are the Korg Nano Control Studio, Nano Control 2, the MIDI Mix from Akai, and also the Launch Control XL from Novation. When you have these faders, you can individually push like all the way up to channel 6 on the MixPre 6.
And which one do you recommend of those?
For me, my preference is the Nano Control XL. But if you need something more compact, the Nano Control, I like the Launch Control XL. If you need something more compact, the Nano Control 2 is what people seem to go to because it's a lot smaller.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, I was able to suggest the same thing that Mickey does. Just be aware that the nano controller is really sensitive. The fader is really short, so the smaller nano controller is really
Exactly
really
why I prefer the larger surfacer.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally agree with Mickey on that one. And another thing, I wonder, that's more like me, why is the levels from the computer varying so much that you actually need to adjust them? I just wonder. I would try to get them fixed.
Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota says, would you use smoke machines in the studio for live music video recording? My concern is residue on an expensive large diaphragm condenser mic capsule and rack gear.
Good, Ronnie.
Definitely use the right type of smoke fluid. We use the Torhazer 2, I think, which is water-based. It can still leave some residue. One trick to alleviate that is to have a fan in front of the mic blowing fresh, clean air into the area where the singer is, and just have smoke going in the other areas to kind of have the atmospheric haze in the back of the stage. So that's one way to do it. It definitely leaves some residues, but we've been mixing live stages for centuries using from the big boldy, almost black smoke on stages, and we never cleaned the microphone. But maybe Mickey has some other ideas.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, all right, I will say here, the responsible answer, there's first off to understand the way that hazers and smoke machines work is there are oil-based and water-based hazers, okay? Neither of them are good for electronics, okay? There's just like oil-based absolutely leaves heavy residue, and in like concert production environments that I've been in, I have had like expensive digital consoles constantly. I mean, the thing about haze is it will get everywhere. It will get deep inside the unit, and what happens is you have a bunch of tiny little switches inside of your mixer, inside of all these things, right? They get coated, and then all of a sudden these switches stop working. So haze is really not supposed to go in. It's pretty bad, and I even in environments like in live environments, I would always try and keep the hazers away from consoles specifically because they would fill amps up. I would have power buttons on amps would stop working, and it just ends up lots of routine maintenance. In a studio, I really wouldn't advise this because even a water-based hazer, it's water. Think about it. It's water and your expensive stuff. That's my answer.
Mickey?
Yeah, precisely what Ronnie and Chris mentioned. The type of hazer and fluid that you use is very important. Don't use if you're protective of the mics that you have. Don't use oil based. Definitely. And also if this is just like a one-off thing, like a one-day shoot, using like having a single day where you're using water-based smoke machine or hazer. I wouldn't stress too much about it, but if this is a situation where you're doing this every single day, I'd probably, consider not bringing out the vintage microphones and, buying a relatively affordable, like, if you do want a good condenser, like get the TLM 102 or 103, don't bring out the M50 for these shoots.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I've been around through all the years of smoke cookies. Do you remember those? Which were little Tri-S Labs made these little things that look like a chocolate chip cookie, and you burned them, and they put smoke in the air, and it held. Well, OSHA.
What could go wrong?
What you need is you just need a whole line of Nag Champa. Just all across. Everyone And
of course,
now with less asbestos.
the Mole Richardson foggers, which were originally based on mineral oil, and that stuff would get all over everything. You'd have people falling down on the stage because of the oil level that would build up on the floor. And then they wanted this, a hazer just as to see the lights, which is, you have all those moving lights you paid for, so you got to see the beams coming out of them. So that's what they're using them for these days mostly. But in a lot of productions, they'll want a low-hanging fog to cover the stage, for an atmospheric effect. We used to use dry ice generators, or now they use liquid nitrogen, which is quite dangerous in its own. It won't leave a residue, but I did do a commercial where I had to have 6 TVs in a crate, and they're supposed to break open the crate, and all this fog was to come out because it was a hockey commercial, and they were all running. These were CRT TVs. So we pumped liquid nitrogen into the back of this crate for the shot, and we got about 2 takes, and the bottom 2 TVs froze solid and wouldn't generate an image anymore. So you got to watch out for what you do. Also, liquid nitrogen, that nitrogen fog replaces oxygen, which means anything close to the ground can't breathe because there's no oxygen down there. It's not harmful because the air is made up of 90% nitrogen. But when you have that concentration of it making a fog, it displaces oxygen. So make sure that you pump a little oxygen in there too, so that your talent doesn't pass out.
Chris?
I would just say, and yeah, I mean, if you're doing like a water-based solution one time, you're probably going to be fine. And here, I would say a big concern would be that a lot of these units, especially lower cost units, they spit. Okay, and they can actually, like the actual unit, the hazer itself can really spit. So we always kept them in big Rubbermaid tubs because they can spill. I mean, there's just things that can happen, but it's not uncommon to have, at the end of like a concert, to have a hazer, and there's, I mean, 3 feet of radius is just sloshy oil or mineral water or whatever it is. So really be careful. I mean, this is not the stuff that you want around. It's not worth ruining something that's really important.
But it looks so pretty.
You know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to really quick. I did a show with Jeffrey Ross years ago. It was a comedy show, right? And I had just gotten a new monitor rig, and they asked if they could use monitors for just some basic just aesthetic on stage. Ended up with like super soakers with oil all over everything.
Yeah. So you have a little what we liked.
I got PTSD with the oil, guys.
It's actually it's PPSD, post production stress disorder. Next question.
There's $3,000 a box. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Next question comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. What is something that the higher end mixing consoles do that lower end models can't do?
I got Chris.
All right. So here, when we get into this, I mean, the real thing is like the guts of the console, right? So when you go up in cost with these desks, it's all about the components and just quality of those parts internally. And the difference is huge because you're going from like smoke detector wire to real stuff. And I mean, and that's when you're buying, if you're getting a console that's 48 channels and it's like $4,000, I mean, it's just like Mickey Mouse parts inside because it can't afford to not be. It's, you know what I mean? And it's fine. That equipment has a place, as I've always said. If that's what you can afford, you can get your job done and it'll give you a ton of feature sets, and that's really, really important. But when you're actually like A and Bing these like consumer versus pro level consoles, it's a complete other universe of quality and of just intention in how things, I mean, you'll get a lot of probably bells and whistles and feature sets, but also like comfortability and just quality of the tactile surfaces, and just, I mean, it's kind of a large list. So
good, Mickey.
Yeah, in addition to the higher quality build and components, and of course fidelity that comes with higher end consoles, there are a couple of things that jump to my mind. First off is modularity. You typically have your control surface separate from your mix engine, separate from your I/O boxes, and that allows you to mix and match and use the right tool for the job. Sometimes you require a large, very powerful mix engine, but then your space and wherever you're mixing, you might be in a truck that has a tight space. You might have to go with a much smaller surface for that. You can mix and match things along with your I/O and your I/O boxes. Maybe you don't need any Dante I/O. Maybe you just need hundreds of MADI channels. You can fill those I/O boxes with the I/O cards that you need for that specific job or that specific build. Modularity is a big thing when it comes to professional work. You don't want to spend for what you don't need. You just want to get what you need and be efficient with your resources. In connection with that, being modular also allows you to have a system that is very serviceable. You can replace individual channel strip modules. You can replace your mix engine module. And as I mentioned earlier, each individual I/O module can be replaced. It also allows for resiliency. These systems usually have redundant power supplies, 2 or 3 power supplies, and you can swap those power supplies out if something breaks. That's part of the like on higher end, what you'd expect on higher end mixing consoles. And then lastly is a lot more capability in terms of automation. This is especially important when it comes to broadcast mixing desks. You typically find the ability to change the routing of a channel if the fader is faded all the way down or if mute is enabled. That means, like, say, if you have people coming in remotely, like a guest over live view or whatever remote feed you have, once they're potted down, they immediately get rerouted to like a conference bus or a pre-fade bus so that producers can have a conversation with them whenever they are not on the air. Another thing is like GPIO control. You'd have like several dozen GPIO ins and outs from the consoles that, say, if you are mixing a Formula One race, you cut to camera 16, which is on this bend of the track, you'll automatically get a specific mix of microphones that pans things around in your, either surround mix space or in Atmos. And these are automatically triggered by what the video switcher is doing. So a lot of automation capabilities is what you'd expect in a professional broadcast console.
Good, Courtney.
I have to learn to put my hand down if going after Mickey because he covered really all the high points I was going to mention. If you're talking about an analog console or a console that's even a digital console that has analog front ends on it, the quality of the components match to, if they have discrete transistors, and some of them do, instead of op amps in there, the quality of the analog components is important. If you have transformers, which are rarely used anymore in consoles, that high quality transformers are used, that makes a difference. And the digital side, the speed of the DSP's circuitry that's in there, can give you more channels, et cetera, and give you a lot more flexibility than the cheaper ones that are out there. And serviceability, Mickey touched on that. The ability to remove a single channel module if it goes bad and replace it with another one without taking the whole board down is an important serviceability. There are not too many consoles anymore that have removable channels on them. But if you do have an older analog board, that's a good thing to look for so that when one thing goes down, you don't have to tear apart the whole board to replace it.
Of course, this is Audio Day. Just a quick reminder that we are taking your questions. Of course, you can ask the questions. You can vote on the questions. You can chat about those questions in Mukana. You can go to, if you want to get there, you can go to officehours.global/join, sign up there, and we'll send you an email within a day or two. You'll be in here asking questions and doing all those things. If you've got questions, this is, again, Audio Day, and I realized that I jumped in and did this announcement before Alex gave his 2 cents about the last question, so I'll throw it back to Alex.
Yeah, it's that was really well covered. The only thing I will add is, we talked about build quality, serviceability, sound quality, all that kind of stuff, and some of the difference between analog and digital too. What I will say is one of the biggest complaints that I hear about, one of the biggest limitations if you're looking at the analog world, is sub-$1,000 mixers have a lot of routing limitations and also limited I/O. For example, a lot of bands that want separate monitor mixes will need multiple auxiliary outputs, and a lot of sub-$1,000 mixers, you're lucky if you get 2 or 3. So that's one thing. Also, there are differences even in reasonably priced digital mixers between different product lines with redundancy. For example, like on cheaper digital mixers, you get 1 internal power supply. On higher end digital mixers, you often will find 2 power supplies for redundancy. Those are important factors as well. Even differences in build quality with the faders too, like the difference between X32 and Midas. You get the higher end Alps faders, which in theory have a much longer shelf life. So those are all things to think about, and obviously everything that Mickey said and Courtney said.
And also we have a jumping number of people watching on X. So if you have questions, you can put them in live. We'll try to get to them before the end of the hour. Audio questions are probably better for today, but you can ask any question you'd like around technical. If you haven't seen us before, this is we are answering your questions every single day about media production. You can go to askofficehours.global to ask those questions. But again, today is audio day. We talk about video a little bit more on Thursday. We talk about infrastructure and IT on Friday, but every day is different. So those are the upcoming days. Askofficehours.global. Let's go and jump into the next question.
Next one comes from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. And Mike wonders, first morning, everyone. With the release of the new feature-rich public beta for Ecamm Live, does the panel see more software switchers combining elements of Loopback, Zoom, ISO, and tiles to their stack offerings? And how does this affect system CPU draw?
Go, Ronnie.
I saw the latest news release or the live stream they had where they announced this new functionality. Since it's audio day, I'll focus more on the audio part of these things and what I think. And for Ecamm, they've done a lot of stuff lately. They've removed the plugin that you had to add to the, and this is beta, by the way. They removed the plugin to be able to do some tricky stuff with the Mac audio. They have now replaced it with code that is living inside Ecamm and that directly uses the core libraries of the OSX. This is, I think it's Sonoma something version. You have to be newer than that, and the platform will then integrate more solidly, maybe, into the core audio capabilities. And then we have to see, of course, if this is still something that Apple has to develop further. We've had some problems with this, as people know, not by Ecamm, but I think the new way that at least Ecamm and a few other companies are doing this is maybe getting rid of more of the extra software that we tend to use, like Audio Hijack, etc. And what we're seeing is that the software-based switchers is doing more and more. Ecamm's side is doing a lot of stuff inside the Zoom integration. So they added a lot of functionality on that as well. And we see like Mimo Live and other types of companies like the one from Wirecast, etc., is doing the same thing. So we see a move into this, and they are doing more and more stuff that they see we as the users need. And this, of course, makes it possible to move more and more of these softwares into the cloud as well. So bright future.
Next question.
Next one comes from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Are any of our panelists community attending NAMM 2025? What tech, instruments, products, etc. on your wish list are you looking for in 2025 that may be at NAMM? And he's got a link to the show.
Go, Jeffrey.
So yeah, my plan was to go to NAMM, but unfortunately, certain things have come up, and of course, I was really concerned about the wildfires, which are not going to affect Anaheim at all, which is good. But I've been getting a lot of the press releases, and I'm actually under NDA on a couple companies I can't talk about. But the things that I did see that I was really interested. Rolly's going to come out with a brand new keyboard that works. It's kind of hard to explain, but a Rolly is a keyboard where you can actually, it works kind of like a stylophone where you can move your finger around and it'll do different things like bends and pitch changes and things like that. So that was a pretty interesting one. Roland came out with some new drum modules this year, and then of course a new set of drums that actually are super silent for practice because they included gel and a rubber component to it. So I wanted to check out that, and it's going to be some big game changers. Another drum company is called F-Note, EF Note. I saw them at NAMM a couple of years ago. They had a different way of actually triggering the drums, which made it for really nice play. And they've got a new set coming out. I really wanted to take a look at, but I can't wait for that to get a chance to do that a little bit later. Universal Audio, their Luna update, that's the free software, doesn't require, their new update will not require UA hardware. So you could download it and start using it as your DAW if you wanted to. That was exciting. Biodynamic is getting into the in-ear monitor systems. So I don't know what company they bought out, but they're definitely getting in there and getting new headsets out for NAMM. And then I really wanted to see Taylor Swift, but since Ronnie wasn't going, I wasn't going to go either.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm not going. I've been invited a ton of times, and I've always wanted to go, but alas, have not made it there. As far as I think that really the big thing about NAMM is just the community there, and actually going there, being with all the people, and really networking. Gear is great. It's not that exciting after a while. It's all, you know what I mean? It's people kind of redoing things over and over. And yes, every once in a while, something that's truly like life-changing comes out, and that's amazing. But really, I think it's just about like the community, do things in a thoughtful, quality way, get the best thing that you can when you're going to buy equipment, and ride it until the wheels fall off, and then upgrade when you have to, you know. But yeah, that's
my recommendation. If you do go, there are some good videos that'll show you this. You just go to each place that has a guitar and start Stairway to Heaven. Just jump in there, start the stair. There's a great, someone did a clip of
they won't kick you out.
No, there's a great video from NAMM a couple of years ago where someone did as a fun thing. They went to each one, started there, and people just grab onto the neck. They're like, no. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas wonders, Yamaha released the DM3 firmware version 3 with an integrated 8-channel automixer. Anyone had any experience with it yet? And he's got a link to the YouTube video.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, Douglas, I'm pushing the update button live right now. No, I'm going to do it after the show.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Poof. I was a little worried about the update because the 2.0 firmware update, which was a big update for these consoles, a lot of people had issues with it where after it would, in the middle of the update, you would just get a blank screen with a flashing cursor, which, by the way, if you've ever updated firmware, that is not a good look at all. So it made you think that you've bricked the device, and then you would, force reboot it, and everything turned out to be fine with that update. So there was something really wonky with the last update. This update, I was chatting with someone on Discord in the general audio channel, and he said that he installed it last night and everything went fine and did not have the problems of the previous firmware update. So far, so good, at least from one person that I've talked to. So I am going to install it this week and play around with it. Yamaha, on their official YouTube channel, if you want to take a look, they did do a good overview of how the auto mix stuff works, for if you're not familiar with how auto mixing works. Also, another thing to note with this firmware, it supports the newly announced version 3 of the higher-end Rio stage boxes, which is really interesting to me because they've released both a 16-channel and a 32-channel, and as far as I know right now, and it's not documented anywhere, but the DM3 is only a 16-channel console. So as of right now, you can't plug in a 32-channel stage box over Dante. It won't work. So it's interesting that it says it supports the 32-channel Rio. So I'm assuming they must have more addressable channels, but I haven't been able to get any confirmation yet.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I don't know about that, but I've been having this mixer on my top 3 list for more than a year, or since we saw it first in California. And what we are always been thinking of is the solid product that it is. It's high quality, or at least relatively high quality components, relatively high quality faders, etc. And now when they are also adding the newest interfaces, as Alexander said, and the Automix, which has been the biggest struggle for us, that it didn't have Automix, because we see this in conferences and in panel debates, etc. This is a perfect tool for just doing that stuff. So now when they have this Automix functionality, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get one.
And welcome again to our very quickly growing viewership on Twitter, or X. Sorry, I keep on calling it Twitter. So we just want to thank you all. If you have questions, you can throw them into the Dropbox. We do this every day. I was going to be like, well, we'll do this once a week on Twitter, but given the number of people viewing, we may do it more often. But you might want to go to officehours.global/join to make sure you get an email every day to let you know what's going on. You can also find our YouTube channel at Office Hours. Office Hours Global is what you're looking for on YouTube. And of course, if you have questions, you can throw them into our Dropbox. You can go to askofficehours.global. Let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
David Brady's up next from New York City, and David wonders, looking to mount a pair of AKG 451s in an XY pattern on a lectern, is it possible with a single mic stand and some sort of funky mic mount?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I mean, there's absolutely options for there. I'm a little confused though. You mean this is a lectern like in a church, correct? For sermons, I would not be using those mics for that application at all. So I mean, if this is like a podium mic, you want a vocal microphone for speaking. So I would really try and get more. And maybe I'm wrong by the application, but it sounds like the wrong tool for what the job is to me. And I think really just get a vocal mic and learn how to use that, and you'll be way better off.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, you can do this. You can set up an XY mic pair on a single stand with something like a K&M microphone bar. This is the 23550. The one that I use personally is the 23510. It provides a bit more flexibility in how you set up your angles in an XY pattern, depending on how many degrees you want. If you want to keep it at a standard 90 degree to each other, or if you want it a little wider or narrower. You saying that this is meant for a lectern. I'm curious if you're trying to capture a single person speaking and with an XY pattern. I don't know how useful that would be in a mix. I'd probably, if you want to mount two microphones, I'd probably just do, two microphones, one primary, one backup pointed straight, and not do any stereo microphone technique with this if it's just speech.
Next question.
Nigel Dessau in Austin, Texas, USA. I believe I heard Alex say that we are streaming on X today, Twitter. I can't see it. Where should I be looking?
So now, Nigel, in all fairness, you asked this question early on, and it was the question sitting in our section where I realized, I wonder. So I saw it immediately. It showed up in my little media area. So I was like, well, it's doing whatever Twitter or whatever X does to expand it. But then I saw your question at 7:06, and I went ahead and hit post. That went out to a lot more people, I think. So people that would know what I'm talking about or know why I'd be doing a live stream. So we now have over 200 people watching on Twitter. So welcome to everyone on Twitter, or not Twitter, X. I'm going to call it Twitter because I've been doing this since it was very young. But anyway, X. So welcome if you're on X. Welcome to the show, and we're going to probably do this more often on X, given the popularity. Next question.
Zach Stahlsmith of Chautauqua, New York, is up next on our questions for routing an X32 via USB. How can I assign faders to the output from my computer or audio from a specific program using Loopback? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, I've done this for a couple of people that have boards lying around. I would take each application that you want to send separately into your board and create a loopback device that either brings in every single application by hijacking the application directly, or if the application allows you to select the audio interface separately, something like Zoom or a DAW, I would bring those in via an audio pass-through input within Loopback, and then route those channels individually to your X32 via a monitor device within Loopback. And monitor device is essentially just an output that goes into a physical audio interface within the computer. And then when you get into the X32, I'm just going to cut to the X32 edit here. I'll go into routing. Actually, let me resize this window here. I'll go into routing and then go in the inputs tab. And instead of, I like using user ends because it allows me to route individual channels individually instead of in blocks of 8. But what you can do is go into set the inputs to your card inputs, or if you do use user ends, select the user in here in the inputs tab, go to the user in tab, and then so say you want to route inputs 1 to 8, go into the card source and route those one by one to your actual channels.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And Roscoe says, okay, audio gurus, Carrie Underwood had to sing a cappella in the U.S. Capitol when the backing tracks failed. What can we all learn from this? And he's got a link to the performance.
Now, this is the third day in a row we've talked about this because it's been so if you want to hear us make up stuff of what was happening in the back end, you can listen to extra hours on from Monday night. We were all doing kind of a mystery science theater of what was actually probably happening in the back end. And I think we're going to clip that out and put it up on the show. And then we talked about it a little yesterday, but we said we should put it on, you should ask Wednesday because the audio gurus will be here. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, rehearsal is one thing, and because of the change of venue, which we talked about, could have thrown a monkey wrench into their plans as to, the equipment they were going to use. Maybe they had a full broadcast truck. I'm sure they did for the outside setup, and maybe they couldn't get that broadcast truck close enough to the inside of the rotunda, or there were rules or things they couldn't run cables through doors or something. But have backups. Even if it's your laptop with a connection to an MP3 player that is piped into the console, test everything out ahead of time. They may not have had enough time or access to that venue because of security issues ahead of time. So security is very tight at the Capitol building usually. And you have to deal with that. And if you don't have time, a lot of times they only let you in a certain number of hours before. And Alex can speak on that because he's done a lot of shoots from the White House and from the Capitol building. So you're limited in time. Prepare everything ahead of time. Make sure it all works. The equipment that you're going to use for the production itself, test it out before the people arrive, and make sure you have backups in case the one thing that's playing back doesn't work.
Yeah, and to Courtney's point, I think that the change of venue had a huge impact on just the whole thing felt a little, not quite put together. Go ahead, Chris.
This is the first I'm hearing of any of this. I'll say,
So Chris, to get you caught up on it, there was a minute and 50 seconds of silence while they try to get the background tracks to play for Carrie Underwood. She at the very end said, "I can just sing it," and then they let her sing it. That's what I assumed. So a couple things to take here. One, stuff happens. Okay, and I have bought insanely expensive things and had them immediately break. I've bought the craziest stuff and had it immediately fail and need tech support, whatever. So anything can break. In most of these situations, in any kind of high level situation like this, people are pretty much always having backup playback systems where, you literally have two redundant systems because stuff does happen. It can go down and you don't want a minute. Let me tell you, a minute and a half of silence in that situation feels like a year. Okay, that's a long minute. But the thing I would really, really take of this is for anybody who's watching this who is a performer, okay? The real thing here to learn from is Carrie Underwood is a total pro in this situation because she could have said, I can't do this. And then all of a sudden it would have been a showstopper. And what she did was she just kept it going. Right. And that's the real thing in here is this is the open ocean if you're out in the world of production, and you have to be ready to just make it happen. And sometimes it's not exactly in the way you thought it was going to be, and you still just make it deliver. And that's, to me, I think when people really, really fight against that, in my experience, that's when real issues happen, is when people are really, really tied down to things they don't necessarily fully understand, and something changes and they can't just move. Whereas you take this singer who everyone is watching and her entire support system is all of a sudden not there, and she's like, it's cool, I'll just keep it rolling. That's a pro. That's the biggest thing to learn, I think. Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I have to agree with Chris. People who work on these types of events are at this higher profile tend to know what they're doing. But no matter how much you prepare, you have backup playback systems, even doing automatic switching at the interface level or at the hardware level. Things happen, and just carry on and continue doing the best that you can with the circumstances.
Next question.
Michael Boltnot in Richmond, Virginia is up next. Do Novastar LED processors mess with your Dante network? We're doing a corporate tour and have everything networked together for ease, but the Dante network keeps receiving DHCP. We have isolated it to the Novastars, not the netswitch. Any ideas?
I got Mickey.
Yeah, certainly. If you do not have, since you're running what people call a converged network, where you have different types of traffic running through a single network or VLAN, there are certainly situations wherein if you do not have the switches configured appropriately for managing multicast traffic. You're talking about Novastar here, lots of multicast going on there. If you don't have multicast traffic being managed and also quality of service being managed so that things are prioritized properly for the different types of traffic, you will run into issues. If I don't see how DHCP or having a DHCP server or automatically assigning IP addresses would mess things up for you. But this has to be managed. The network has to be managed somehow. And doing the Dante certification courses, and also I'm sure Novastar might have some sort of training program as well. Going through those training programs and certification courses will empower you with the knowledge that you need to know how to manage a converged network. If you want to run things a little simpler, then separate it out into separate VLANs for Dante and your LED processors or LED screen processors, or even run totally separate hardware infrastructure for each.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from David Brady in New York City. Are there any other USB MIDI surfaces like the Korg Nano series? I have an old Samson MF8 and it works, but it's at end of life. And the editor software is bricked on the newer OSes.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the Korg systems are great. Also, the Novation ones I'm a big fan of. Although my favorite in terms of fader MIDI controllers at the moment, and this is also what the composers that we hire really enjoy working with, are the SSL UF8s. The 8-channel fader controller, really lovely faders, relatively affordable if you compare it to the Avid ones.
What's the price on those? Do you know?
I think this is about $1,000 US roughly.
Mm-hmm.
So not horrible, but also not like as cheap as the Behringer ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, really really lovely faders. Good value in my opinion.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris Fonte in Lexington, South Carolina. Would you trust software tools like LAMA Mix over a piece of hardware? Are we there yet?
Go ahead, Mickey.
At this point, as long as I know that the system is built to spec appropriately according to the guidelines, I wouldn't hesitate using a software broadcast mixer like LAMA. If I had to choose on my own, I prefer DSP chips that are dedicated single-purpose chips that have one job to do, as opposed to a general-purpose CPU found on computers. But if it's not my choice and the production gives me the tools to work with, I wouldn't hesitate to work with LAMA.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the higher end the production, the more I would want to go towards the hardware side of things, simply because of the chipset, as Mickey said. But if you are building a computer, if that's how you're working with it, you're building something, build something for the device. Build something that's not going to be also your vMix or not also a separate DAW even. You might want to have a backup DAW just in case in there, but you want to keep it as fresh as possible for that one product if that's what you're going to be making your main dollars from.
Next question.
Abraham Barrara in Flowery Branch says, I'm currently using an Apple Mac Studio M1 Ultra with 64 gigabytes of RAM and 2 terabytes of storage and a BenQ EW3270U monitor. And recently, the monitor goes dark every couple of minutes. I switched out the USB-C cable 3 times and it's still doing it. Any idea what it could be?
Go ahead, Mickey.
It's hard to tell exactly what you mean by goes dark every couple minutes. Is it the actual image that's being displayed going dark, or is the backlight of the monitor going out. If it's a backlight, then that's a hardware issue of the monitor itself. What you mean by going dark is your display goes to sleep. You mentioned a Macintosh. You can go into the energy settings in Mac OS and turn off display sleep. A troubleshooting step I might do is to take another source, another computer perhaps, or even a little streaming stick or an Apple TV and send that into the computer. Does it do the same thing? If it does, it's probably an issue with the monitor.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, if you have to want to test the monitor and the computer both separate. So, as Mickey said, put a streaming stick into the monitor and see if it does the same thing. On the same token, if you got a secondary monitor, put that into the Mac and see if it does it. It sounded like to me that what it was doing was it was detecting another monitor and therefore going through the system, and which will blank out the monitor for a brief second. So if you have any other items plugged into that Mac, I would unplug it and check it from there. Also, if you have third-party software, I have a couple pieces of software on that emulate monitors. You might want to disable that, look at the software that you have on there, update the software that you have on there, get rid of the stuff that you don't use, and go from there.
Good, Ronnie.
And I think this monitor, if I remember correctly, I've been in an edit suite where these monitors were being used. These monitors has their own power saving mode, so you have to go into the menu and check the power saving mode for the monitor itself. And if I remember correctly, this is a few years back, it tends to go black even if we have movement and signals going out from the display. So we changed the displays, but for some reason the display didn't detect that it was enough movement or enough activity, so we had to disable it altogether. So check that as a last resort, in addition to all the other IDs.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think Ronnie hit it. I'm using a BenQ monitor right now. I'm looking at, a lot of these monitors have a power saving mode, that you can access through the menu. And if they don't detect an activity on a signal or a signal level above a certain level, or there's actually a separate sense signal that comes down that HDMI cable, so that tells it whether the computer is awake or not, or it's receiving a signal or not, and it will blank the screen or shut itself off, shut off the backlights at least, if it doesn't sense the proper level signal coming in. So check your cable. I would try replacing the HDMI cable if that's what you're using to get to it. Because that has been known to
Everyone, welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions.
And so try replacing your HDMI cable and see if you still have the problem, because it may be that sense. And like Ronnie says, go into the menu of the monitor and turn off all the power saving settings.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. First day of the semester, the teacher tells college seniors in IU audio engineering that many studios in LA burned in the fires. What would you tell a college kid about careers in audio?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, what I always tell my interns is that if you just become a doctor, you can buy all the microphones you want. So that's my responsible answer.
Go ahead.
So the real thing here, there's a lot of different thoughts and approaches on this stuff. Honestly, the wildfires have nothing to do with a career in audio, right? The wildfire is that's an environmental tragedy right now. It's a terrible thing, but it's not affecting careers in audio aside from the people whose individual studios and workplaces, but it affected their places of work, not audio. So it's it's not really a real question in that, but I think that it's just a matter of if this is a thing that you want to do and you want to pursue. I tell everyone it's a lot more work. Oh my goodness, that was my voice. So but it's all good. I'm sorry, you guys didn't hear two of me.
I'm sorry for the distraction. I'm trying to figure. We're streaming to Twitter for the first time, and I'm looking at it. And every time I open a new window, Twitter doesn't do what YouTube does, which is start without noise. And so I keep on forgetting not to hit turn off the noise and
It's like the
coming out of my speaker.
Netflix previews. I hate that.
Yeah, I'll turn off the speaker in the future. So anyway, I apologize to everyone there. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Hey, they should learn. It's a disruptive feature. They should change that.
Yeah.
So, but I think the real thing is, if you guys want to do this, there's a ton of information out there that's available now. If dig in and learn the best that you can. I would say there's a lot of schools and a lot of things that you can go to, and they can be incredibly expensive. And in the real world, these degrees and diplomas don't really actually matter. It's not a thing that actually it's not real.
Says the unknown thing. It says the unsaid thing, which is that no one looks at your degree later.
No, it's not even a real thing. And so it's just not even acknowledged as a real thing. And so it's the real thing here is that you can get a small rig and learn how to use it really well and not owe 80 grand when you're done and have equipment that you can go out and make money with. So I mean that's the thing I would encourage people to think about. School has a lot of other things to offer, right? In the networking aspects, there's a ton of things.
And I would say, you can pay to have access to studio equipment and a studio and hardware that you couldn't afford. I mean, you can
also rent studio time and have that. So I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about this. So I would just say if you're pursuing a career in production, know that it's a lot of work. There's insanely more to learn than you would think, and it's a blast. It's a ton of fun. The more you learn, the funner it gets. I'll tell you that.
Good, Courtney.
There may have been some studios that burned in the fires, probably more. If any studios did burn, they were in the homes of artists who happened to live in those areas. Because these days, once you achieve any success as a musician or a singer, you build your own studio in your house, which has happened more and more. And a lot of the major studios are wanting for work these days in Hollywood because everybody's recording, at least in their home studios, which are a lot of times outfitted with better equipment that's in a lot of the historic recording studios that are still around town. You go to them for that vintage sound, but these days, since most people can build a studio, it's within their budget to build a high quality studio in their home. That's what's happening a lot. And it shouldn't change. You should not think about changing your career because of a fire burned down somebody's home studio or even a top-notch recording studio that may have been in the path of the fires. What you worry about is if a fire or a tsunami takes out the factory that manufactures the HD chips, and you will not be able to rebuild that factory for another 4 years.
Those chips went from
affect your career.
$2 to $250 in 1 week. When the Ecamm fire hit. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a sound engineer that works at a couple different studios here in the Bay Area, and he said, sound at this point, sound studios are really a rich person's game. He said people just own them because they like to hang out with artists. He goes, they don't actually make money. They just have, but there's some really nice ones in the Bay Area. He goes, owned by people who have a lot of other things, and this is just a little bit of a hobby. Go ahead. He said, but they're really nice, and they're so go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I would say that. If you're passionate about audio and really interested about learning it, that there isn't just one path. So, a lot of people come out of school, they're like, I got to work in a recording studio. The reality is that there are very few studios, and there are less and less all the time. And so usually I would recommend people maybe look at working at a production company. Remember, you can work in film. You can work on movie sets, TV shows, and post-production. There's lots of different opportunities where you can really learn, and that's one of the best ways to do it is just get out there and do it. But it's getting harder and harder to get a job in a traditional recording studio environment, so I wouldn't just limit yourself to just that one avenue.
Good, Nikki.
Yeah, what would I tell a college kid about careers in audio? Don't go into audio because you think it's glamorous, because it's you'll be hanging out with all these artists. Don't go into audio because you think you're gonna get rich. You're not. Go into audio because you like audio, you like mixing, you like engineering, you like music, you like film, whatever aspect of audio you decide to go into. you're just to add to what Alexander was just saying. You're gonna start off making coffee for people if you really want to go build yourself up for the big leagues. You're not gonna be at the board on day one. You're gonna be making coffee. You're gonna be making coffee. You're gonna do runner errands. You're gonna be lifting equipment. But if you work hard, the more you put in, the more you'll get out. That's what I would say. Specifically regarding the LA fires, LA as a small market, California as a small market, the USA as a small market. There's the entire world to work within. So don't be let down just by a fire in LA.
And I do think I read an article based on this question that Roscoe put in. I think that five or six relatively substantial studios that went down with the fires, but there's many studios in LA. So it's, I mean, it's a tragedy for the folks that lost that. Some of these are historic studios that were burned to the ground, but it's probably 1 or 2% of the studios that are floating around in LA. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just very quickly. I mean, this is another thing. Just after running internships for so long, and I always told first interviews in audio and in production, wherever you are, you can go to every recording studio in your city and ask for a job, and everyone's going to tell you no. Okay, you can go and ask every production house, can I have a job? And they're probably all going to tell you no. There's no jobs at all in this. But the second that you actually learn this and really, really learn this, and other people that really do it understand that and that you're qualified and that you are an asset, you'll be turning work down. And that is how this business works, okay? It will not let you stop at the point. I know people that artists will not let them quit. It's just, right, you're just too efficient and too effective, and no one else does it like you. And all of a sudden, it's like name your price, and it just doesn't really matter, because if there's a budget and you are the one person that makes that thing happen, I mean, man, if you're looking these corporate settings, people are getting like astronomical rates for these things. That's where this stuff really, really comes into play. So it's really, you have to hone this as a craft and become really, really good at it. And this is how I have interns that are working with the largest artists in the world that are touring just world tours all year, every year, that started out as my interns really knowing nothing, right? You can do this. If you want to do this, you can absolutely go and learn this and do it, but it's a lot of work, and that's pretty much the deal.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, one thing I wish I was told back when I was starting out is that I should learn and need to learn the business side of things, marketing, accounting, finances, all that. No one told me I need to know that to be successful. It was like well within a decade into my career that I was forced to learn all of these things, and I feel better now. I mean, I'm still learning a lot, but I feel a lot better now in running a business as an engineer and someone who owns a company who does a lot of various types of sound work. Having this background is essential.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida is up next. How long a USB-C cable can you use with an Insta360 Link 2 pan-tilt zoom webcam?
Good, Jeffrey.
The standard is 3 meters, 9 feet, and you can get longer. You can get items that'll be injectors in between that 9 feet. I've even used optical USB-C cables that have done more than 9 feet, but you risk a lot of things when you go past that 9 feet. So 9 feet is your number.
Ronnie?
Yeah, so I have a good luck with this cable I'm showing now, which is actually 16 feet, so equals 5 meters here in Scandinavia. This is a 15 watt, 5 gigabit cable for, actually it's made for the Quest headset or Quest 2 headset. And it delivers, I think it's 15 watts, that's like 3 amps, right? And making sure it's 5 gigabit or higher, I think you should be good. And this is pretty long. We use this for Insta360.
Who's the manufacturer of that?
Well, it's not on Amazon. It's something in Sweden, actually. I'll drop a link in the Mukana, and you can research this yourself and see if you find them, or I can send it to you.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, the official specification for USB-C, USB 3.0 over USB-C is 3 meters. There are active cables, both copper and optical fiber, that can run longer than that. I've also had success using fiber and also copper-based USB 3.0 extenders from companies like Icron and Geffen, and I believe JJ McKenna has also, if JJ is listening, put it in the chat. I believe he's also used another company to successfully transport USB 3.0 over RJ45. I just don't know what company, but I've used Icron and also Geffen for those.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I remember DC is being powered to power all those little motors in the PTZ, so it requires a good amount of current. So make sure your cable can handle, has the highest current handling capability, or if you're using a longer cable than 10 feet or 3 meters, 3 meters, then make sure it has a beefy, higher gauge cable to carry the DC, because remember, DC drops depending upon the length of the cable that it goes, and you get a low voltage at the other end if you don't.
I have not been successful. That's why I was so interested in what Ronnie had. Is I have not been successful over 3 meters. So I've tested a lot of cables from Amazon and haven't been successful. So that's the limit that I've seen so far. But I'm very interested to play with what Ronnie's done. I'll order one of those, and we'll see how they work. And I've been using it with the Insta360 Link 1, and that's been what I've been testing against. Thanks to all the producers asking all these great questions. We had to push some of them back to you. A reminder that if you're in Mukana and you ask those questions, we're going to push them back to your notes, so you can bring them back in another day. If you are if you put them in over the QR code, we push them back to the QR code, bring them back in. Make sure they're well formed. Try to make sure that they don't expect other context. So if you say, we don't understand, here's a build on my last question. We can't remember what the last question was. So every question has to be kind of self-contained. But thank you so much for all those questions. Thanks to the panelists. Wednesday is always this great audio day. Lots of great answers. You can see how little I talked because the panelists really just answered all those questions, and all I had to say was next question. So it's a very relaxing day for me. So thanks for the great work from all the panelists, and thanks to the incredible team on the back end. For those of you watching Twitter, we do this every day on YouTube. We may start doing it every day on Twitter. We answer your questions for an hour a day, every day, and there's an incredible village. This takes, with the panelists, takes maybe 15, 20 people to get off the ground every single day. They're all volunteers from all over the world, and they do an amazing job. So thank you to everyone for your contribution. Today, if we had been the flawless traversal was in my little window and then disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. 30,000.
It's in the post-to-host notes.
It is. It was in the window and then it was taken away from me. I saw it there and I was like, I'm just going to go to the window and get it, and then it was gone.
Hey, it's an experimental test bed in part.
Yeah, exactly. We're still figuring it out. The flawless traversal, 30,000. We would have traveled, if we'd done this in person, 30,000 miles. That's 49,000 kilometers, and that is 241 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. I was thinking about how great it was so great to have it in the window, and I was like, that's great. I'm just going to look over there. My eyes won't change, and then it was gone.
I felt so for you because I know when you have. Oh, wait a second, we're doing something new. I can't look in the same places. I have to split my head another way.
I had moved it somewhere else. I was like, so whatever happened, we need to have it in that window. It was great.
Live performance is such fun.
Yeah. And so I was like, we've had that test frame in there for one day, and we already used it. So anyway, so we'll keep on playing.
Good job, everyone. Wow.
Yeah, great. Yeah. A lot of people watched on X, so that was interesting experiment. So we'll probably do that again.
I wonder if that'll change the nature of the QR code questions as that audience
gets
more involved.
I thought maybe we'd get more. I thought maybe we'd get some more QR code questions during the show, but we didn't. But we'll probably talk about the QR code more because we have.
Yeah, let me know if we need to run a show for
we'll
tomorrow.
Probably increase the velocity of it. So
yeah. I set up a new set of timers just to try to time those announcements, and I was going to test them tomorrow. So if you want other changes,
what do we
let
do
me
if
know.
we find